Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. The sun had barely risen over Lingerie when the magic began to fade. At first it was subtle, a flicker in the mage-lit lamps, a hesitation in the enchanted fountains, a shiver of energy as the very air seemed to lose its vitality. But by noon there was no doubt. Magic, the lifeblood of the world, was disappearing. In the grand halls of the Tower of the Arcane, panic spread like wildfire. Allure stood in the midst of it, her heart pounding. For years, she had studied the ancient texts, learned the art of magic, down to its smallest intricacies, but nothing had prepared her for this. The arcane stone was missing, the very artifact that balanced the world's magical energies had been stolen. "Are you listening, Allure?" A sharp voice snapped her out of her thought. She turned to face Archmage Durin, an imposing figure with a long white beard and eyes that burned with the intensity of 1,000 spells. He was the head of the council, and his patience was running thin. "Allure, you are one of our most promising mages. We need you to find the arcane stone and bring it back before the world falls into chaos." Allure blinked, her mind racing. "But Archmage, how the stone could be anywhere? We have no lead." Durin's expression softened, though his voice remained firm. "We have one lead there. It's been word from the wildlands. Bandits there are known to deal in powerful artifacts. You must follow this trail." The weight of the task settled on her shoulders. Durin nodded gravely. "Good, but you won? To go alone? You will need someone who knows the wildlands, someone who can navigate its dangers, and someone strong enough to protect you when magic failed." By the time she stepped out of the tower, the streets of Lingerie were in disarray. Mages struggled to perform basic spells, and enchanted objects lay useless in the hands of confused citizens. The heart of the world was faltering, and it felt like everyone knew it. Allure's path led her to a small tavern on the outskirts of the city, where she found Tobin in a corner nursing a drink. He looked up as she approached, one eyebrow raised. "You must be the maid, and you must be the rogue." She shot back, unimpressed by his casual demeanor. Tobin's reputation preceded him. He was a thief, a trickster, but also someone who knew the underworld like the back of his hand. "What's this about, then?" Tobin asked, leaning back in his chair. "The arcane stone, it's gone." His eyes widened slightly, the only sign that he understood the gravity of the situation. "And you think it's sent in the wildland?" "I think whoever took it might be hiding there. I need your help to find it." Tobin sighed, finishing his drink before standing up. "All right then, let's all hope you can keep up."
"Me."
The wildlands stretched out before them like a vast untamed beast. The further they traveled from Lingerie, the more the landscape shifted. Lush forests gave way to barren plains, and the ever-present hum of magic became nothing more than a distant memory. Gareth, the third member of their party, marched ahead with a steady, disciplined pace. A knight of the Royal Guard, Gareth had been assigned by the council to protect Allure. Unlike Tobin, Gareth was all business, no jokes, no tricks, just a man with a sword and a rigid sense of duty. They camped at the edge of the wildlands as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the barren earth. The fire crackled softly, its flames a dull orange without the enhancement of magic. "I don't like it," Gareth muttered, glancing around at the darkening landscape. The wildlands were dangerous enough with magic. Without it, "We'll manage," Tobin said, lazily leaning back against a rock. "Besides, we're not without tricks of our own." Allure, sitting between the two men, felt the weight of her task pressing down on her. She had been trained to rely on magic, to trust in the flow of energy that connected everything in Lingerie. But here in the wildlands, that connection was severed, and she felt exposed, vulnerable. "Do you really think we'll find the stone here?" Gareth asked, his voice low. Allure hesitated. "I don't know, but if it's not here, then we'll be running out of places to look." Tobin chuckled. "So much faith in the council. What makes you think they even know what they were doing?" Allure shot him a glare. "The council said the only reason the world hasn't fallen apart completely." Yet Tobin corrected with a grin. Before Ella could respond, there was a rustle in the darkness beyond their camp. Gareth was on his feet in an instant, his sword drawn. "Who goes there?" A figure emerged from the shadows, an old woman, hunched over, her eyes gleaming with a strange light. She approached the fire slowly, her movements deliberate. "You seek the arcane stone," the woman said, her voice low and gravelly, "but it is not here." Allure's heart skipped a beat. "Who are you?" "I'm Isolde, a keeper of the old ways." I know the one who took the stone. He calls himself the Magister. Tobin tensed beside her, and Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. The Magister, a name whispered in fear, Icily continued, but he's more than a thief. He seeks to reshape the world to control all magic, and the arcane stone is the key to his power. Where is he? Gareth demanded, his voice edged with frustration. Isol's eyes gleamed. He hides in the lost citadel, a fortress long forgotten by time, deep in the mountain. But beware, the path to the citadel is treacherous, and the Magister has powerful allies. Allure exchanged a glance with Gareth and Tobin. They had no choice but to follow this lead, no matter how dangerous it sounded. Tell us how to find the citadel, Alara said, her voice steady. Ailsol smiled a cold, knowing smile. You will find it if you survive the journey. The journey to the lost citadel was unlike anything Alara had ever experienced. The wildlands were a labyrinth of twisted paths and crumbling ruins, each step fraught with danger. Without magic to guide them, the trio relied on Tobin's instincts and Gareth's side sword to navigate through the treacherous terrain. They passed through desolate villages where the last vestiges of magic flickered out like dying embers. Once beautiful forests were now twisted and gnarled, their life force drained. Everywhere they went, they saw the signs of a world falling apart. We were running out of time, Eller muttered as they trekked through a narrow canyon. The longer we take, the more magic fades. If the stone isn't restored soon, I don't know if the world will survive. Tobin glanced at her. We'll get it back, Dante word. His confidence was reassuring, but Alira couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled in her chest. The Magister was out there growing stronger with every moment they wasted, and without magic, how could they hope to stop him? As they neared the base of the mountains, the air grew colder, the wind sharper. The path to the lost citadel was steep and treacherous, but they pressed on, driven by the knowledge that the fate of the world rested on their shoulders. At last, they reached the entrance to the citadel, a massive stone fortress carved into the mountainside. It was ancient, its walls crumbling with age, but there was a palpable energy in the air, an energy that felt dark and twisted. This is it, Gareth said, his voice low. The lost citadel. Alara nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. Be ready. The Magister won. She let us take the stone without a fight. As they stepped inside, the air grew colder. Still shadows flickered in the corners of the vast hall, and the floor beneath their feet seemed to hum with dark energy. At the far end of the hall, a figure stood waiting. He was tall and imposing, his robes black as night, his eyes glowing with a malevolent light. The Magister, Tobin muttered, his voice tight with tension. Alira's heart raced. This was it, the moment they had been dreading. The fate of the world hung in the balance, and there was no turning back now. The air inside the lost citadel was heavy, almost suffocating as Alara, Tobin, and Gareth stood facing the Magister. His dark robes rippled with unseen energy, the arcane stone glowing faintly in his hand. A sickly light pulsated from the stone, casting eerie shadows that danced along the ancient stone walls of the citadel. I knew you would come, the Magister said, his voice slow and venomous. Fools, all of you thinking you can undo what has already been set in motion. Alara felt the pull of the arcane stone, its energy calling to her like a long-lost friend. But it was wrong, twisted, and corrupted by the Magister's influence. She could feel the darkness emanating from him, a power unlike any she had ever encountered. Bry's here to stop you, she said, her voice firm despite the fear creeping up her spine. The arcane stone belongs to the world, not to you. The Magister smiled, a cold, thin smile that sent shivers down Alara's spine. The world does not deserve the arcane stone. You see what happens when magic is left in the hands of the weak. Chaos, destruction. I will bring order with the stone. I will create a world where magic is controlled by those who are worthy. Gareth stepped forward, his sword gleaming in the dim light. Enough talk. Give us the stone, or I'll take it from you. The Magister's eyes glowed brighter, bravery from a man who knows he is outmatched. Very well, knight. Let's see if you were as strong as you think you are. Without warning, the Magister raised his hand, and a surge of dark energy erupted from the arcane stone, crashing into Gareth. He flew backward, hitting the ground with a sickening thud. Alara screamed, rushing to his side, but he groaned and pushed himself up, determined to stand again. Tobin, quick as always, darted to the side, throwing a dagger aimed at the Magister. Sorry. But the blade stopped mid-air, suspended by an invisible force before clattering harmlessly to the ground. The Magister chuckled. Is this really the best Elindor has to offer? Pathetic. Alara's mind raced. She couldn't rely on her magic. Here it was too weak, too fragile compared to the dark energy the Magister commanded. But there had to be something she could do, something that would break his connection to the arcane stone. Tobin, get ready, she whispered, barely loud enough for him to hear. The rogue nodded, his eyes sharp and focused. She turned to the Magister, her heart pounding. You think you were in control, but you were wrong. The arcane stone doesn't belong to you. You were just a thief, a man desperate for power. The Magister's eyes narrowed. I'm no thief. I'm the future. Elala's mind churned, drawing on every ounce of magical knowledge she had. She couldn't match the Magister's raw power, but there was something else, something ancient that might work. She began chanting softly under her breath, calling on the old magic, the deep magic that existed before the arcane stone, before the organized spells and rituals. It was risky, dangerous even, but she had no choice. The Magister's smirk faltered as he felt the shift in the air. The shadows around them seemed to tremble, and for the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. What are you doing? Alara didn't answer. She focused all her energy on the spell, weaving it with precision and care. The citadel's walls seemed to vibrate, the stones groaning under the strain of the ancient magic she had summoned. Tobin moved quietly behind the Magister, his steps light and calculated. The Magister raised the arcane stone high, his voice growing desperate. You cannot win. I am the master of this power. Alara opened her eyes, the spell reaching its peak. You are not a master, you are just another pawn. With a final word, she released the spell, sending a shockwave of energy through the air. The force hit the Magister like a hammer, disrupting his connection to the arcane stone. He staggered, his grip on the stone faltering for the first time. Now, Lyra shouted. Tobin sprang into action, lunging forward and knocking the arcane stone from the Magister. The stone skittered across the floor, its glow dimming as it rolled to a stop. The Magister roared in fury, summoning every ounce of his remaining power to strike back. But without the stone, his control was fractured, unstable. Gareth, recovered from the earlier blow, charged forward with a battle cry, swinging his sword with all his might. The blade sliced through the air, aimed directly at the Magister. In a last desperate attempt to defend himself, the Magister raised his arms, but it was too late. The room fell silent. Alara breathed heavily, her body trembling from the exertion of the spell. Tobin picked up the arcane stone carefully, holding it as though it might break in his hand. We did it, he said, his voice filled with disbelief. Alara nodded, though she felt no relief. It's not over yet. Gareth wiped his blade clean, eyeing the fallen Magister warily. We need to destroy the stone. Tobin frowned. Destroy it. Isn't that what keeps magic alive? Alara shook her head, stepping closer to the stone. It's what kept magic in balance. But now ... it's too dangerous. If the wrong person ever gets their hands on it. Again, her voice trailed off, the implication clear. Tobin looked torn, but after a moment, he handed the stone to Alara. What do we do? Elameka stared at the arcane stone, its light flickering weakly. The weight of the world seemed to rest in her hands. She knew what needed to be done, but it wasn't easy. We destroy it once and for all. Gareth placed a hand on her shoulder. Are you sure? Alara met his gaze, her heart heavy. I am sure. Together, they gathered the strength they had left. Alara, Tobin, and Gareth stood in a circle around the arcane stone. Alara began chanting the final spell, the one that would shatter the stone and end its power forever. As the words of the spell filled the air, the citadel trembled. The walls seemed to close in around them, the weight of centuries pressing down on their shoulder. The light of the arcane stone grew brighter and brighter until it was almost blinding. And then, with a deafening crack, the stone shattered. The light vanished. The citadel was plunged into darkness. But it wasn't the oppressive, suffocating darkness of the Magister's magic. It was the quiet, peaceful darkness of the world as it should be. Alara fell to her knees, exhausted. Tobin sat down beside her, his face pale but relieved. That was something. Gareth sheathed his sword and looked out at the crumbling walls of the citadel. Magic is gone. Alara nodded, her heart aching at the thought. It had to be. For a long time, they sat in silence, the weight of what they had done settling over them. The world would never be the same. Without magic, everything would change, but it was a change they had to accept. Finally, Alara stood, her legs shaky but determined. We should go there. There's nothing left for us here. Together, they made their way out of the citadel, the sun rising over the mountains in the distance. The world was quiet, almost too quiet, but Alara knew it was a new beginning. They had saved Elindor, even if it meant losing the magic that had once defined it. As they descended the mountain, Gareth spoke, his voice soft but resolute. We'll rebuild without magic, but we'll find a way. Tobin chuckled. Well, at least I won't have to worry about magic traps anymore. Alara smiled faintly, though her heart was still heavy. The world had changed, and they would have to change with it. But they had done what was necessary. They had saved the world from the Magister as tyranny, and that was enough.